Hello and welcome. It has been 30 solid years since we established the annual ritual of taking a holiday on the first Friday in December to praise ourselves for doing a lot in the field of agriculture. A government after government sing praises songs and award themselves medals for boosting food production in the country. Enough for domestic consumption and for export. But for these farmers who till the soil under the scorching sun, the story is different. They get poorer and poorer by the day. It is a case of much ado about nothing. Who is really telling us the story or the true state of our agriculture? My name is Nana Ansakwa, and this is PM Express. When I come back, I'll introduce my guest. Thank you very much for staying. Now, it's a very important and equally a sad subject that we're going to talk about. You see, if I was able to trace back to my Class 3 agricultural science paper and brought it here today and asked any of my panelist members to mark it, I'll probably score the same as I scored then in Class 3. Why? Because problems in agriculture is lack of irrigation, lack of storage, lack of roads leading to where the farming areas are, lack of funding. Anyway, back in Class 3, we didn't talk about lack of funding, but then there was the types of storage, freezing, drying, and it's still the same many, many years down the line. It's almost predictable that if I was able to save this show and play it next year, it will still be relevant. What is it that you and I can do to really ginger the spirit, knowing very well that the backbone this country is agriculture? Now, to my immediate left is Dr. Owusu Efiri-Akoto, an honorable member of Parliament for Kwadaso, and also ranking member of Food and Agriculture and Cocoa Affairs Committee in Parliament. He's also a farmer, so he knows what I am talking about. And then to my far left is Edward Kariwe, who is Deputy General Secretary, Ghana Agricultural Workers Union, TUC. So he is the guy fighting behind the scenes to make sure the farmer gets some equity. Gentlemen, you're welcome.
Most welcome.
Well, we say, are equal to our farmers? And then, Doc, I want to start with you. It is so obvious, that the country by nature, how God has placed it, on agric. So you have the waters, you have the land, the vegetation, the climate. Everything tells you that, listen, go out there and till your land. And true to the fact that if you till the land, you will be far better off. What is it that doesn't make us do it?
It is to do with public policy. Farmers up and down the country are some of the most hardest working group you can get anywhere under the sun. And they do their little best. What is required is to bring policies in the area of the public sector to support the farmers, to improve the content of technology on the farm, to have access to the markets, and to support these markets. All of that is what we call in economics public goods, which should be provided by the rest of us so that they can take care of us. These are not coming. And at least if they come in drips and drafts, to the extent that you don't get the bulwark support that is required to push the sector to perform the role that God has given us to perform. And hence we are having all kinds of problems. The President of the Republic was in Parliament on the 25th of February and confessed that in 2013, Ghana used $1.5 billion of our hard-earned currency to import 7 basic food items that can be produced cheaply in this country. To me, that's an indictment. What he forgot to tell the people of Ghana is that when the government took over in 2009, the food import bill was less than $600 million. And within that short space of 6 years, it had trebled to 1.5. And I can almost predict that in another 5 years, it will exceed. We may have to spend all our foreign exchange importing these basic food items. And we are talking about meat, poultry, we're talking about rice, tomatoes, onions, cooking oil, basic things that everybody in this country has to rely on, and which are produced throughout the rich soils of this country. And why would you wonder, why is it that you have half of the labor force in agriculture, and yet we are having to bring in all these, spend our precious foreign exchange, which should be used for infrastructure, to develop this country, in just chopping, as we say in West African English, just chopping? It's because we are not taking care of them. I'll give you a classic example. The budget this year, which was read only 10 days ago, has set aside 40 billion Ghana cedis in 2015 for total expenditure and for development. You ask me what percentage of it was put aside for agriculture and fisheries. 1.1%. And this percentage steadily is being reduced every year. When in 2008, it was 3.5% of our total budget going into these two sectors. And steadily it's been cut. So you see that there's no priority. Because if you are prioritizing something, then you put in more resources. You know, the difference between 435 million, which they were provided last year, and 445 million this year. If you take account of inflation, it means that we are actually less, resources are being reduced into these sectors. That's one example. The other example I will cite is last year's budget. It was clearly stated in black and white. 180,000 metric tons of fertilizer will be imported to be distributed to farmers at subsidized price, so that they can afford to apply it with improved seed to increase the yields. You ask me how much was imported? Not one bag. And it was in the budget. An appropriation bill was passed by the parliament of this country that the government was going to import, to use resources to import this amount of fertilizer. And fertilizer is the base of any technological input. I mean, with all the improved seeds and so on that our scientists have discovered and are now standard everywhere, if you don't apply the fertilizer, you won't get it. And if you apply the fertilizer and you don't apply the improved seed, you won't get the productivity.
Let me acknowledge Fifi Kwete, who's minister in charge of the subject matter we are talking about, agriculture. Fifi, welcome to the show.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening, good evening. Welcome to the show.
Your viewers and your panelists as well.
Sure. Fifi, we're talking agriculture, and my initial question was, knowing very well that the country is positioned and blessed, you know, agrarianly, if there's a word like that, why aren't we moving that direction? Or what's stopping us moving? Doctor explained that there wasn't enough public policy, but just as he was ending, in last year's budget, you know, the amount of fertilizer, 180 tons of fertilizer that was supposed to be imported, not a bag came in for this sector. And also the percentage, you know, going towards agri this year slashed to 1.1%, meaning that we are not prioritizing your sector.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I think we need to first appreciate that, yes, it's true that the Ghanaian economy will continue to be largely agrarian. I don't think it's just the Ghanaian economy at all. I think the African economy will continue to be largely agrarian. So agriculture clearly will continue to hold the key, I mean, for growth, for development, and for the transformation. Agriculture, however, we need to explain, will continue also to be a private sector endeavor. Every farmer in our country historically has been a private sector operator. That's who they are. Effectively, they take their own destiny in their hands. Basically, they risk the little savings they have to be able to do this business, and then hoping that through this business they'll be able to take care of themselves and their family. Okay, so largely that's what it is. Even at a much bigger level, it becomes still a private sector achieving activity. So there are responsibilities that the private sector people themselves need to be conscious of and continue to pursue. Now, there is, however, an interface where public policy comes in, and that public policy also comes in with certain, I would like to call it, infrastructural requirements in order to be able to play a complementation to what private sector people do. So really, it becomes a right hand helping the left hand in order for us to be able to have the forward march that is expected. Now, issues relating to some constraints that continue to bedevil agriculture. I mean, it must be explained that, listen, all over the developing world, as long as you have a resource constraint, you clearly will not be able to get every single one of your problems resolved. It's not just possible. Doc, I think, spoke about fertilizer for 2014. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. Fertilizer 2014 was a difficulty. But we must be able to appreciate that we are operating within a certain economy. And 2014 has particularly been a very, very challenging year for the economy as a whole. And so, of course, when you have such challenge, no sector is left out. Every sector is affected. I don't think any sector of our economy can say that they've got everything they want.
Fifi, before you continue, is fertilizer not basic? As I mean, like if you were going to cut anything else, at least give them the fertilizer to grow and probably cut something else, maybe cut the pickups and stuff.
We need to appreciate that until the year 2008, we were not even having fertilizer subsidies in this country, and yet it did not mean the end of agriculture. So for us to clearly pretend that somehow a fertilizer subsidy that is holding the key for the transformation of agriculture, it should be something that we need to be careful about. Okay? Efforts are being made by government to continue the fertilizer subsidy, but we are not under any illusion that clearly subsidizing fertilizer alone, because the fact is this issue of fertilizer subsidy itself, not just in Ghana, but in many other countries, continues to have difficulty. Difficulty not just in terms of being able to afford it, but the issues relating to the abuses that oftentimes tend to be very rife, as long as you create incentives that makes people want to, as it were, take fertilizer away from the very farmers that need it onto other people's hands. So we obviously are making effort to ensure that not only do we have fertilizer subsidy, but we clearly resolve those problems, which a lot of farmers will tell you, because of some of those problems, even though you're subsidizing the fertilizer, they are not getting it. So it's not simply an issue of saying that there's no subsidy of fertilizer. It's an issue of making sure you resolve some of those problems so that once there is subsidy, at least the fertilizer will be able to reach those smallholder farmers in order for them to be able to...
Fifi, hold on and let me get... Thank you. Hold on, let me get Edward to respond to that because he's on the ground and deals with...
I thought you were asking me a number of issues. I've not even said anything. I'm already holding on. I thought you spoke to speak about it, or you called me just to speak about subsidy.
No, I'll come back to you. I'll come back to you, Fifi, so hold on for me. Let me get Edward to respond about this fertilizer issue, as in it being the basic commodity for the farmers. However, Fifi's explaining that once upon a time it wasn't there. So it couldn't be, the main issue.
Well, if something is basic, it must be provided at all times because it's basic. Mm-hmm. If it were secondary, if it were something that is avoidable, then we can have an excuse why it should not be there. But if it is basic, please suppose that it must always be there. Otherwise, you cannot make progress. So I don't know whether fertilizer is actually basic, but I'm worried about our lack of a clear understanding about the role of agriculture in the overall development of this country. If that focus is not clearly defined, then we'll be beating about the bush all the time. We'll appear to be holding one thing at one time, at another time we are unable to hold it and we leave it, then we go back to it and so on. One, if we agree that this country's development is hinged on agriculture, then of course we'll be motivated to develop a cluster of policies to deal with agriculture at different levels. Agriculture is not only about production, it has to also do with processing. And most importantly, is about marketing. So the different levels require different cluster of policies to address that situation. Beyond that, what is the linkage between agriculture and other sectors of the economy? That must also be very strong, so that agriculture can then serve as the pivot to induce those other sectors of the economy. You see, sometimes it isn't that we have not had this idea before. And a very good example was when in the 1970s, the SMC government, by then led by, I think, General Champon, came out with the Operation Feed Yourself and Operation Feed Your Industry. Now, that clearly tells us that we want to industrialize. We also want to make sure that we eat what we grow and we become self-reliant. And we also how massive, the massive transformation of the economy in terms of food availability, sustainability, security, and then industrial growth and the generation of jobs. If we have sustained that type of program, development paradigm, today, most of the things that we are complaining about in terms of rice imports, poultry imports, and so on, would have virtually been zero. But today, what we are doing is, you hear sometimes a certain confusion about what agric is supposed to be. Agric must, they are drawing into our ears that, look, take agric as business. It's not all the time that we have to take agric as business. We have agric business and we have agriculture, where culture is part of it. If you have a backyard garden, that may not necessarily be business that you are doing. You are made to appreciate that. You can even take it as a hobby, and that you are not seeking to make profit necessarily from it. And yet, inadvertently or unintendedly, it will produce something which will then go to add to the market. We have not done that. So until we have a strong grasp of, first and foremost, what do we want to hook our development paradigm on? Is it agriculture? If it is agriculture, then we need to develop this type of cluster of policies and then make sure that we have the linkages properly put. But as it stands over the period that is coming from all the governments, we are just confused about what to do with agriculture.
Fifi, what do we have? Do we have an agriculture policy or an agribusiness policy?
First of all, when a statement is made as if in 2014 no fertilizer was available in this country,
no, I didn't say that.
You need to clarify that.
You were talking about a particular one that you were going to import.
I never said that there's no fertilizer in the system. Please, Minister.
Fertilizer.
Minister, please, don't misquote me.
Please.
I said I'm talking about the 118,000 metric tons of fertilizer, which was...
Allow me?
No, but I wouldn't allow you to misquote me. I never said there was not one bag of fertilizer.
I didn't say I was even referring to you. I didn't even say I was referring to you, so I don't know why you're rushing into.
Okay, so it's not a reference to what
Doctor said. I'm making a reference to you.
Okay.
Okay. Somebody just spoke, and the person said fertilizer is basic. So if fertilizer is not available, so I'm making a reference to that statement. That if you make a statement to the fact that fertilizer was not available in 2014, that obviously is not the truth. Agriculture involves many aspects. Cocoa production had huge assets of fertilizer this year. And the rice sector project, fertilizer and subsidized fertilizer was made available for a particular program in rice. So it's not the case that blanket-wise there was no fertilizer. Now, beyond that as well, we need to appreciate that not all the farmers waited for subsidized fertilizer. Because many of these farmers clearly themselves know that they are in business. They obviously were not going to wait until subsidized fertilizer was available. So very many of them were able to procure their fertilizer, even though it was not subsidized. I'm saying that we clearly will wish that, especially for the smallholder farmers, now obviously issues of affordability of fertilizer is an issue. We make subsidized fertilizer available to those. And I said, for this year, it was difficult to do so, largely because of budgetary constraints, largely because we had difficulties making payments of previous fertilizer that was supplied, especially in 2013. So that naturally was a difficulty. So it's not an issue of that is what the order of the day is. That's what you call a blip. A blip does happen in all economies all over the world. It is only when that becomes a permanent order, then you can make a case like, how can you not have fertilizer? I feel that is what the order of the day, as far as this country is concerned. That's not what it is. From 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, subsidized fertilizer was available in Ghana. So that is what the order of the day is. So if you have what you call an exceptional situation because of budgetary constraint, and you want to build your case on an issue which is an exceptional situation, your analysis leaves a lot to be desired. That's the first one I want to say. Two, when we make issues about agriculture or agribusiness, the two of them are linked. Because you see what, even if you are doing just backyard gardening, what that does is to create to grow food. And because that food then becomes available to your own household to begin with, what it means is that you free money. Money that normally you should have used to go to market to go and buy food, you now have the money available to be able to do other things. So it raises your income level. And that, to an extent, shows that as a result of what you are doing, your income levels are increasing. We want people to appreciate agriculture from either the perspective of getting additional income, supporting them, and therefore growing through that, or creating anything that would literally reduce their expenditure and the process free more money, and they can use that money to be able to do more things. But when we're talking about agribusiness, the point is simply to stress that we must approach agriculture from a very professional standpoint. All right? It's not something to be done just haphazardly anymore. It's not something simply to be left to chance anymore. But you approach it the way you approach every serious endeavor. Meaning, if you have to be serious with seed, you are serious with seed. If you have to be serious with what you call agronomic practices, you are. If you have to be serious with business practice, because you must treat the same way the agro-production market woman treats her business, the same way we want even the smallholder farmers to be meticulous and very particular, even in the way they go about it. So it's a cultural mindset change that we are talking about. So it's not simply words that are being bandied. We're talking about instilling a new culture of professionalism and seriousness in the way it is done. And naturally, you must appreciate. I mean, if, for example, you even take the world of telecom, in the past when we did not have some of the advanced technological breakthroughs, there were a lot of things that were done. They're done in a very slow manner. But now we are in an age where, as a result of infusion of new technology, people are doing the same thing, but doing it far more efficiently. It's the levels of efficiency, even at the smallholder farm level, that we are asking for. And that happens when you, as a farmer, are ready to embrace new ways of doing things, approaching it from a different perspective. Then, of course, government has its job to do. And that job has to do with working on infrastructure, ensuring that what you call proper research and technology abilities are available, ensuring that what you call through extension services, agronomic practices are increased across the length and breadth of the country. Of course, helping through the Ministry of Trade to be able to expand market and different other things, including irrigation and so on. Government clearly will do resource available, to be able to do what it has to do. But there's a lot that needs to be done at the level of the smallholder farmer and the farmer in general. So it's a partnership. But oftentimes when I hear conversation, it's made to look as if, listen, the farmer himself or the individual or the unit itself hasn't really got a lot to do. It simply has to do with Father Christmas government that has everything to do. No, that is the kind of approach we've adopted over the decades. That's why we've not made the progress. Other countries that are making progress are doing so conscious of the fact of partnership between government and the individuals that are involved. So much as we call government to rise up to a challenge of making sure the necessary environment is created, we also need to make a call on the farmer to say, listen, rise to the challenge, because you can do even far more than you are doing now, in spite of the constraints that are existing. Because really, in spite of this same constraint, there are many people who are smallholder farmers who are really making leaps and bounds, increasing their acreage, getting far more efficient, making more money. It tells you that even in spite of the constraints that are available, people still, when they apply themselves meticulously and professionally, they are doing fine.
Vivi, I'm going to take a break here, and then when I come back, I just want to find out about how this partnership works, because the farmer, picking from your words, has to do things well, professionally, and all that. And after he's all done all that, he can't construct the road to bring his produce to the farm. He's then now stuck in the rural area of what then do I do with my tomatoes? I can't just simply get it out of here. And I think that's where the despondency between farmers and government are. Not that he's on his farm being lazy, not farming. He's done all he has to do, but just simply can't get the produce anywhere. And when he gets it anywhere, there's no market. And where there's market, there's no storage. And that's where the issue is. Stay tuned, we're coming back. Well, hello, and thank you for staying. I told you this topic was very sad and very important. And we're talking about how we are neglecting the backbone of this country. Literally, watching our future wither away. But Doctor, let me come back to you as to, the public. I think this is the oldest PPP ever. I grow my tomatoes, I grow my cocoa, and then the government has to play his part so that, because I can't make the road to bring my own produce. And I think that's what the despondency has been.
Precisely, and I'm very surprised at the minister's response. Because first of all, we all know that farming is a private sector activity. The essential component is the public sector part to bring the whole story to completion. And that is what we should be discussing. That's the concern, that the farmer, we know, they get up 6 a.m. in the morning. Some of them come 7 p.m. They get home to their homesteads and so on. Very hardworking. But that is not the point. The point is supporting the farmer with the appropriate technology. I mean, maize farmers in this country, only 20% of them apply improved seeds. Only 20%. Can you imagine what the situation would be if 40% of them are applying improved seed and fertilizer? And subsidized fertilizer last year was selling for only 45 Ghana cedis. Now, you go out there, you have to pay 130 Ghana cedis per bag. How can a small farmer with 1 or 2 acres afford that? So that's the role of public intervention, that they get subsidized fertilizer, subsidized seed, so that instead of harvesting 2 bags per acre, they can do 6, 8 bags. And that is progress. And governments all over the world do it. I mean, even the advanced countries.
Subsidies, what would the state do? Maybe waive the duties of it to bring the
Well,
price down?
whatever it is, that instead of this 130 Ghana cedis, which are selling now, the farmer pays 45 cedis, so that the threshold for being able to adopt the technology goes down in terms of the financials and encourages them to apply more fertilizer. That's the whole essence of it. But to say that 10 years ago, oh, there was no subsidy and we still lived. 10 years ago, we were not using $1.5 billion of our hard-earned currency to import food into this country. I mean, one has to be realistic about the situation. And 10 years ago, Obatampa, the maize, wonderful maize improved seed, which is now adopted all over West Africa, had just been discovered and was being trialed and so on. And now it's the standard. So farmers should be encouraged with a guarantee that government support will come, rain or shine, so that it doesn't discourage them from adopting these technologies. I mean, maybe the minister is underestimating the disincentives which have been driven through the maize sector, for instance, which is the biggest crop in this country, grown in all 4 corners of this country, and is a staple for every ethnic group in this country. The disincentive which has been sent to these small farmers because of they couldn't afford 130 Ghana cedis of subsidy, fertilizer subsidy. So we need to send the right signals to the producers, the farmers, and ensure that they have the confidence to adopt this technology. I mean, all kinds of new varieties are being discovered by very great scientists in the universities and institutions. And we need to maximize on these things and improving our productivity. That's the essence. If you want to transform agriculture, it means that you need to improve your productivity. Your yields should go up the same acreage. If you're getting 2 bags, you should be getting 10 bags. And then the farmer gets improved incomes, his own situation changes, surpluses come, and then we are able to cream up these surpluses to support the rest of us. But if today we get it and tomorrow we don't get it, then all his efforts come to nothing. They till the land and all that. I mean, the same thing, we're talking about the tractor hire services. Mm-hmm. This year in the budget, they are talking about from 89 AMSTECs, which are the tractor hire services, that they're going to add another 41. When in the last 3 years, only 3 have been added. You know, one has to be realistic about these things. That tilling the land and so on, the mechanization is also very important for productivity. So these, for small farmers, are so important in their lives and in their livelihoods that government should do everything possible to prioritize and make sure that constantly is there for them. And that's what happens everywhere. I mean, the United States government spends billions and billions of dollars supporting their farmers. The EC, the same thing. You go to Europe, the CAP, those days, even then, we're spending about $25 billion supporting the farmers, and they are still doing it. And these are the small farmers by European standards. And ours, in Ghana, the Ghanaian farmer uses the least fertilizer per acre in the whole of Africa. You know, we've hardly started that revolution. So if we decide that we are going to make sure that we support them, come rain or shine, that should be the priority if we are serious about agriculture. And I don't see this happening, because if you put it in your budget, the whole budget, that you're going to supply 180,000 metric tons of fertilizer, and at least the effort will be, oh, we supplied half, we couldn't supply the other half. And then you say, oh, because of budget constraints, nothing. I mean, it means that the farmer who still supports this country. Don't forget the $1.7 billion US dollars loan that we got, the cocoa syndicated loan, is because of the farmer. They produce the cocoa. It's a cocoa board which produces cocoa. We pledged their sweat to international bankers to collect this $1.7 billion in the hope that we'll pay back in the short term when we sell the cocoa. So they play a very critical role in the economy. And to make an excuse, whatever excuse, that because of some budgetary thing or fiscal deficit, you cannot afford to give them fertilizer, I think is an indictment.
Edward, I mean, the farmer obviously has been dealt a very hard blow. You know, and is it maybe because they haven't put up red armbands and hit the road and say, you know what, we're not feeding you anymore? Because we can't underestimate their role. You know, greening the country, feeding the country. I mean, it doesn't get better than that. I mean, even mining that depletes, you know, our resources and damage our land, they don't get penalized that much. You know, so what is it that we can't value the farmer? What is it?
Well, it comes from our refusal to start from where we have the gust or the foundation. Because if you have not discovered that that is the right place to start, certainly you will be looking for better places, I mean other alternatives instead of agriculture. Why do we want to over-rely on banking and financial institutions to grow what? Why do we want to rely on services to provide what? Why do we want to rely on mining as the basis for our development? When we have been endowed with all that we all know, the waters, the environment, and so on, to do that. You see, and again, it baffles some of us why our governments, the past and present governments, are not courageous to replicate certain things. One, if you take the cocoa industry, we have just been told that cocoa itself is a private sector business. The individuals are private. But the institutions have been made to work. Government has a responsibility to set up those institutions, build the structures, and let them function in a coordinated manner to free the farmer from thinking about what he or she cannot do. And we could replicate that because we understood the importance of cocoa to the economy of this country. And we have since put in those structures and institutions, and it's working well for us. Now, why don't we replicate it? Today, we must know that the per capita consumption of rice will continue to grow due to factors that are obvious. One, there's urbanization. The middle class is also growing. And certainly, our taste has changed, and rice has become the stable.
Rice is the new corn, yeah?
Now, so in this case, what do we have to do as a country? This is something that, whether we want it or not, the consumption will continue to grow. So it is for us to put in place structures today to ensure that we increase our rice production. Because our imports continue to go up for rice, and if we are able to increase rice production, then we are stopping the amount of money that we send outside to import the rice. That is one. Beyond that, we are also going to create employment because the sector will expand. And then rice is not only about consumption, but we are told it's also used for beverages. If we have enough, new products will come out of rice.
I mean, Achampong secured Aveime rice, and started. I mean, it took up to President Kufuor for it to start moving again. I mean, considering rice takes 3 months to grow, apparently. I mean, so what is it that took us so many years to grow a plant that takes 3 months to grow?
We listen more to people than ourselves. You must listen to yourself more to really discover your capacity, and then you can only, once in a while, take some pieces of advice from other people. One, we have been lured into a certain mentality that economic policy advice coming from development partners, coming from bilateral countries, is best for us. That is unfortunate, because it has happened before, and I'm saying we have a history to say that it was good, and we have our own examples which we can rely upon. Even, poultry is the same thing. So why should we still be grappling with agriculture? Why? Again, you also understand that it's not only about production. When people produce, where do they market it? Our trade policies are totally anti-agriculture. It's totally anti-Ghanaian. Almost everything is imported. It's not only about agriculture, but it's about even the other sectors. Once the institutions are not properly laid, there will always be capital flight out. Today, we have about 27 or 28 banks, different type of banks in the country. Yet, they are refusing to lend to farmers. I mean, how can you come to Ghana, operate in our country, and you cannot be directed what you should do? Government has not got the guts to tell financial institutions that a certain percentage of your loan portfolio must go to agriculture. If you're not ready to operate in Ghana, you can go. Look at 25 million people or so, yet we have 28 banks. Yet, the critical area, they are not ready to finance that. What they are only interested in is to finance imports. And then we destroy even the small local market that is available to farmers. When you talk about government, public, private partnership here, I'm also tempted to think that we are confused about that type of partnership. It will always exist. But the way we want to structure it It's wrong for our system. A farmer will do that out of a cultural behavior born into it, but later on could learn that, look, even though I've been born into it, I can now make money out of it. We require public policy to make provision for what the farmer, the individual cannot do. Where are shallows for farmers to store that? Who lifts the food from the farm gate and where does it go? Who is concerned about that? Do you expect the farmer in the rural area to be concerned about how to lift the food from the farm gate to the market center where he or she does not even know the place? There are many people who would have wished that they get a big truck, carry their tomatoes, carry their rice from the rural area and come to Accra. But look, you cannot go to Makwala, you cannot go to Abubuloshi, you cannot go to any place and offload and sell it there because the system will not allow them. Even when they sell, before they go, all their monies will probably be taken away from them. What institutions, what structures have we put in place? So, again, for me, we are getting it wrong when we are talking about public-private partnership. Maybe at a different level, but not the manner in which we are practicing it. It will not take us anywhere. And for some of us, 30 years of having Farmers' Day celebration should have taught us a lot of lessons. But it appears we still want to remain at the rudimentary level where annually we mount the podiums, we decide what we are going to give to farmers, and yet refusing to address the fundamental needs of them. I will not go into farming because I have the dream that one day I will be on it. I will go into farming when I know very well that I can get assistance to start the production. After producing, my produce will not get rotten, and that I can take it to the market and make money. Whether I am on it or not, that is not it. There are more controversial issues even about the Farmers' Day celebration. We make it a whole public holiday, and we all enjoy it. Who benefits from the public holiday? Farmers are so rational and so duty conscious that they will not stay at home for 1 hour when there is need for them to be on the farm. So if a farmer is not being honored on that particular day, and he or she has to go to the farm to harvest, the farmer will not stay at home because there's a statute that day is a public holiday.
Let me take a break and come back because I can attest to that fact that even in the villages where the farmers are being honored, those who are not on the list sometimes go to the farm.
Yeah, that's a tiny minority anyway who receive awards.
So stay tuned. We're coming back to find out what can we do so that come next first Friday of December, what can we do different? What story would it tell different? Stay tuned. The true state of Ghana's agriculture, stroke agribusiness, stroke agri-everything. Come to Doc. I think Edward was making some very relevant points, which hasn't dawned on me, that the whole national holiday thing really doesn't even go to the people who the holidays are for, including the agri ministry and the farmers. And it's we who are on the side who have nothing to do with it, who really maximize on it. And indeed, maybe we can recognize the day for the farmers, and then the rest of us, get to work would have been a better decision. But while you answer that, I want to find out what can we do so that come the 1st December of next year, we have a different story to tell.
You see, this culture of tokenism, I call tokenism, which is really taking over public policy in this country. It's not the substance of what you want to do, the support that you want to give to the farmer, the support that you have to give to the factory for it to produce efficiently, but something to show that you are doing something. Because really, this Farmers' Day, I mean, we've done it biblically for, for 30 continuous years. And if you sit back and reflect, for me, I was saddened on Friday, because if you look at the difficulties of the farmer, the circumstance of the farmer, you know, in the 1950s, farmers will go out of their immediate areas into the forest, plant cocoa. They will be there for maybe 7, 8 years. They come back into town and they are ready to build. Kumasi, Ashanti New Town, was built on cocoa money. Everybody was going out there to Ahafu and so on. My father and his friends, that's how I came into agriculture. You know, went out there and planted cocoa, and then, you know, in the late 40s and by the mid 50s, you know, it was blossoming. You know, people came and built 2, 3 houses and so on. Today, how can any farmer dream of such intervention? It's not possible, because even their daily bread is a struggle. You know, the average cocoa farmer, for instance, is operating maybe 2.5 acres. That's about a hectare or 1.5 hectares, and it's getting what, 17, 18 bags maximum in a year. If you work it out in terms of the current, even the current price of 340 Ghana cedis a bag, you see that the laborer who takes his cutlass every day, by what we call it by day, he would be earning more than the average cocoa farmer. It's because the price that the government has allocated, has fixed for his produce, is a pittance. You know, he can hardly break even. And this is why many young people are not going back into cocoa, because he sees his father's poverty grinding him almost to a halt, and he escapes from it, and you expect him to go back. You know, so we have problems, real problems. As I was saying, Cote d'Ivoire has almost the same land size for under cultivation of cocoa like Ghana. They are exporting this year, they expect to export 1.5 million metric tons. Ghana is doing about half, about 850. So it shows you the low productivity of the Ghanaian cocoa in the industry. And we need to be taking very serious policy decisions, interventions, effectively getting to the trees, the farmers' trees, to make sure that the soil shoot and capsid and all these things are reduced so that the yields can go up and so on. And you look at the substance of it, how many tons of each of these items are now getting to the farmers and being distributed. You can see that it's just sliding.
Look, apart from cocoa marketing board, is there another crop marketing board that we should have set up by now?
Oh, yeah.
What should they have done?
Yeah, but you know, by law.
Maybe maize marketing board?
No, we had a grain development board. We had a grain development in the 70s, which was set up under the Buzia regime. And that is an act of parliament. You go there, you see it. That's why they had all these warehouses all over the place, and food distribution company and so on. It was all part of that arrangement. It always whittles away, and a lot of people don't even remember that we had arrangements, very modern arrangements to support food farmers and so on. You know, I was in Rwanda early last year. Rwanda, the size of Rwanda is not even Eastern region. And now they are supplying the whole of the Eastern region, or Eastern Africa, you know, with maize and other things, because they are organized. The government's intervention, you can see that something is happening. There are all these warehouses in strategic areas, minimum prices. Once you enter there, you know that you are going to get this per bag and all that. And that's the way to do it, you know. But, you know, this business about, and they don't even have Farmers' Day. Funny enough.
Edward, next year, 5th of December, are we going to still say the same story so that I save this recording for next year, or there should be something different?
This is a question that I can't vouch for a change. I would think that you should keep this recording for next year so that you play it. Because we are not ready to make a change. And where we sit we observe things and we say that our policymakers, our political elite are getting it wrong. They are not in touch.
Talking about getting it wrong, I hear the minister is back to make an intervention before the show ends. And thanks for getting back to us, Fifi.
Yeah, but I need to register serious in my protest. You call me in order to be able to take part in your discussion. I'm on air, I'm not in your studio. And yet you keep asking the people in the studio again and again questions and leave me completely out of it. I don't understand. So if you didn't need my contribution, you shouldn't have asked me to take
I do apologize. My crew didn't let me know. You see, because I can't see or hear you, my crew didn't alert me. So I do apologize on that. I apologize.
Anyway, quite a number of things
You
were
didn't
said.
accept my apology. You didn't
Quite a
accept my
number of
apology.
things were said by those who were obviously in the studio. It would have been good to have opportunity to correct some of the obvious misimpression, wrong impression they have created. And unfortunately, it looks like your time is really over. So I don't really know how much what is left to be said. I don't.
We have 2 minutes if you can summarize it for me, if it's possible.
Anyway, what I would say is this, that agriculture clearly is important, and the way we need to go about it is to ensure that we create the opportunity for farmers to be able to do even better than they are doing. A number of things that government clearly will do, we will. I mean, things relating to fixing infrastructure, we definitely will want to spend resources to do so. That's why a number of things that are happening. For example, with the World Bank support, we are doing quite a lot in irrigation. There's big project coming up for innovation, a lot of irrigation facilities across the country, both in the south and in the north. We are changing even the very structure of irrigation development authorities so that we can have a much more sustainable management of irrigation schemes. We obviously, as I said, for 5 continuous years, we have had fertilizer subsidies from 2009 all the way to 2013. If there was a difficulty in 2014, it's simply a difficult year. That's it. We definitely will resume normal service from 2015 going forward. So, I mean, keep this going on and on and on about the difficulty in fertilizer. Basically, it's neither here nor there because it's definitely resumed again.
Anyway, Fifi, while I have you on, and since I have only 1 minute, I just wanted to find out, come next Farmers' Day, will our story be different, or will we come back and, still the same also? Can our story be different? Let me put it down.
You know what?
Yeah.
You know what? There's no part of the developing world you are going to go that you are not going to have constraints in various areas of your national life. Everywhere you go, even if you go to Vietnam and Thailand, that have made far more progress in agriculture.
Are you saying that come next year, our story is still going to be the same?
What I'm trying to say is that every single year you will have constraints. But in every year, you will be making effort towards reducing some of that constraint. So you don't expect that next year, we are going to resolve every problem with irrigation and resolve every problem with feed and resolve every problem with credit to farmers. It's not going to be so. But you clearly will make some effort towards reducing a bit of that problem. That is simply normal. That's the way it is done all over the world.
I think we all.
Let's not be creating what you call utopian expectations.
No, not at all. Not at all. I mean, well, we made reference to the budget being cut down because of budget deficit.
But then I thought I explained the issue.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. So come next year, I agree.
And I explained that next year there will be normal resumption as far as
thank you very much. Well, thank you very much. I mean, that's what I wanted to hear from you. Now, come next year, at least it will be better than this year. But thank you very much, and I hope to continue this show and get you in the studio.
No.
Very good. Well, finally, I've run out of time. I knew there wasn't going to be enough time to talk about this, and I hope I can get my gentlemen back so we talk about this. I even want to talk about the press release that you released, but we didn't even get that far, from the General Agricultural Workers Union. Very important, salient points in there. But gentlemen, thank you very much.
That's welcome.
And folks, as I said, tomorrow we'll be back to do it all over again. And thanks for watching.